Welcome to the 22nd week after Pentecost. It is Wednesday, October the 23rd, 2024. This is the Manna at the Tap podcast, where we as a community actively seek the spiritual nourishment our souls crave. The daily lectionary reading we explore together is the manna, designed to nurture our spiritual growth and provide the sustenance our souls need. I'm Gloria, your fellow traveler on this spiritual journey, and together we share insights and interpretations from these readings that enrich our spiritual life. John 13, verses 1 to 17, the lectionary reading is a transformative story of love, compassion, and service. This is the third Passover that John's Gospel records. The evening began with Jesus and his disciples sharing a meal. Jesus knew the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to his Father. Love is the thread running through the lectionary reading. It is the main verb of the text. Jesus loved his disciples in the world and loved them to the end. Love covered all that had come before and all that was to come. The meal was in progress, and Jesus' love for his disciples will drive him to wash their feet as an expression of that love. In the meantime, Satan is at work prompting Judas to betray Jesus. But let's take a moment to set some context in the Gospel of John. In the Gospel, there is no Last Supper with the Eucharist, the breaking of the bread, and the wine drinking. From John's perspective, this evening is the play out of Jesus' radical, self-giving, poured out love, washing his disciples' dusty, sweaty feet. The only other dinner mentioned in John's Gospel takes place in John chapter 12, 6 days before the Passover at the home of Lazarus and his sisters. John said the dinner was in honor of Lazarus being raised from the dead and with Jesus' burial. After dinner at the home of Lazarus and his sisters, Mary anointed Jesus' feet with her perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. Judas objected to what Mary had done, questioning why the perfume was not sold and the money was not given to the poor. John said Judas was a thief and only cared about himself. Mary demonstrated an extravagant act of love for Jesus. The Bethany siblings, Lazarus, Mary, and Martha, are the only people other than the Father himself whom Jesus is specifically said to love until here in the lectionary reading when he proclaims his love for his disciples. Now let's go back to our lectionary reading. After the first verb of love in the opening verse of the chapter, the following verbs will be in verses 4 and 5 as the unfolding of the foot washing begins. Jesus deliberately rises, takes off, takes up, wraps around, and pours to wash and dry the disciples' feet. The foot washing expresses the love Jesus had for the disciples and his love for us. Like Peter, we may reject this act of Jesus' love for us, but it might be an invitation to consider our understanding of what it means to let Jesus love us. When Peter wanted Jesus not to wash his feet, when Peter wanted Jesus to not only wash his feet, but his hands and his head, Jesus told him he was already clean. There's this sense that Peter perceived what Jesus wanted to do for him to be a shameful act. But Jesus did it as an act of his love for them. Judas remained silent as Jesus washed his feet. But Jesus, knowing that Judas would betray him, said that not everyone was clean. After washing all the disciples' feet, Jesus put back on his clothes and returned to his place. He explained the meaning of foot washing to the disciples. He was their Lord and teacher, and they were to follow his example and love one another just as he loved them. He overturned any expectations they may have had by demonstrating this act of radical love as an example to all who call him teacher and Lord. The Gospel of John tells the story of God's love for the world. And Jesus demonstrated the love of his Father by humbling himself and washing the disciples' feet. We too are called to pour ourselves out in love, just as Jesus had done for us. We will then be able to be his servants. And now that we know these things, we will be blessed if we do them.